I'm going to talk about something that's really difficult to talk about when you're in it, becomes a little less difficult once you're out of it, and becomes a powerful testimony once you're far away from it. And I already know, based on how I'm titling this video, that you'll already understand that and have most likely gone through something similar to this. If you need to play me at 1.25 or 1.5 playback speed, please do so. I'm going to try and take my time as I talk about this. My leg is asleep and it hurts, and it's perfect for what I'm talking about because I really did feel like I was asleep. I felt like I was numb and I felt like things hurt. So thank you, leg, for the confirmation. I wanted to talk about this now that I'm at a place in my life where I don't get so overwhelmed and traumatized by it, and I truly have understood what I've learned from it. And I think it will be beneficial for other people to hear about it. And the more that I've met people who have been through something really difficult and really traumatic, the more I've learned that, them being able to talk about this horrible traumatic thing that they grew through and learned from is a part of their testimony, because they can be the motivating factor for someone else who is currently going through that and thinks that there's no end in sight. I can be that person. So that's why it's time for me to do this. And part of me, while I make my hair less distractful in the camera, that's my Libra moon. So I'm gonna make this short and sweet. I won't get into details. I'll save you the excess trigger alerts, although seeing the title should already be a preparation in and of itself. I was in 2 abusive relationships. One was more physical and one was more emotional, psychological. So I got the full spectrum of what it feels like to be abused by someone that you intend to love. My first abuser was my first boyfriend, and I was living with my previous stepfather at the time, and I was finishing out my senior year at the school that I originally went to my freshman year. And I just I moved every year for high school, so my mom offered me for my senior year to go back or to stay in Miami. And I hadn't really made a lot of friends in Miami, and the one friend I did graduated, so I was like, I'll go back. So I did, but she wasn't there, so I was living with my stepfather and pretty much had a lot more freedom than I was used to having, I will say that. So I go back, I'm all excited, I'm seeing people that I had met before, so it was like, wow, I know people. And I had found all my weirdo theater friends in 9th grade, and it felt good to be a weirdo, and people embrace that about you. So I really love theater people for that. Shout out to my theater people, you already know. So I had briefly dated this person in 9th grade for about a week, and we had met in a class and we talked, and we both were from Colorado. He was funny. He thought I was interesting. It was just kind of whatever. I was never interested in dating. I think I was just maybe a late bloomer. I wasn't really interested in being with anyone or being romantic or physical or intimate in 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade. That wasn't there for me yet. And that's okay if it's not there for you yet either. It wasn't. I just wanted to explore. I just wanted to be free. So when someone would ask me if I wanted to date them, I didn't understand the ramifications of that. I didn't understand what it really meant. I still was in my middle school brain of it just means that you guys like each other and you'll write notes, and we didn't communicate about what our expectations were of a relationship. But he asked to be my boyfriend, and I said yes, and he's like, okay, meet me in the Commons before you get on the bus. I was like, okay, cool. So I go over to meet him, and I'm talking to a girl, and he comes over and he turns to me and he kisses me. This is my first kiss, and I'm taken aback because we just started dating, and I turn around and you immediately kiss me, and my body was like, no, I don't. I freaked out. I got scared. I didn't say anything to him. I was just like, okay, I gotta go get on the bus. And immediately I knew, okay, I can't do this. First off, I think your first kiss should be consensual. You should both want to do it. It should be more delicate than that. Just you just meet me in the Commons and start kissing me. To me, that tells me you're just interested in oh, hi, spider. You're just interested in kissing me. And it wasn't special. It wasn't like we had spent so much time getting to know one another and bonding, and then we share that. So it already turned me off. So then I'm on the bus. I'm freaking out to my friend. I'm like, I don't know what to do. This isn't what I want. So eventually, after a week, I find a way to be like, I can't do this. He gets very upset. He's angry at me for like the rest of his days, but still just wants to be with me over the course of the next 3 years. And then I come back in my senior year, and everyone's expecting me to date him because he has been dating other girls and then breaking up with them, saying, I can't, I still want to be with her. And I was basically ruining all these other girls who liked him, their lives, because I wasn't even there. So I come back and everyone's like, oh, are you gonna date him? Are you gonna, he's been waiting for you? Like basically making it sound like it was an expectation that I date him because he had been waiting for me. Again, not your responsibility. If anyone's like, oh yeah, aren't you, he's, so what? If I don't want to be with him, obviously I was young and naive at the time, so I was just like, I guess I'll try, and I shouldn't have. And to condense most of what my senior year was like, once we started dating in December of that year, was a lot of physical abuse, sexual physical abuse, against my will, and obviously that's not fun. And even worse, it was occurring in the portion of my body that doesn't typically happen, because to him that meant, oh, that's not really happening. Like, it doesn't really count, is essentially how he would express it, because it wasn't occurring within the front part of me. If you pick up what I'm putting down, it was occurring in the back part of me. And I think that also continued to numb, desensitize, and bring pain to me, like how my leg was when I first started this video, because I was just facing away, just like dissociating from my body and staring out into the void. He was very strong. He did jujitsu, and it made me feel even worse that I wasn't strong enough to defend and protect myself. Now, this is the part where everyone, always gets so, those things you hear, like, well, why didn't you like do this? Why didn't you do that? And I think a lot of times in those moments where you're being abused, it goes into a lot more of the details of your life. My father wasn't present within my life. I was never taught how a man should respect me because my father wasn't there to teach me. So I didn't know what respect looked like from a man. I didn't know what was expected of me from a man. He wasn't a man, he was a boy. I didn't know what to expect from that. I didn't realize that I should not even really be dating or have a boyfriend until after high school, because it's not a healthy time to be letting someone into you anyway. There were a lot of things I wasn't taught and weren't talked about. And my mother wasn't there, my stepfather was rarely there, and he would just come over and he would, and me, I guess being naive, oh, I just want to hang out, let's do this. It never was like the first thing that happened. It would be like, oh no, I just, blah, blah, I want to hang out with you. And he would try and like, I don't want to say he was a narcissist, because I know people overuse that word a lot. I almost, and I'm not going to lie to you, it almost felt like something would come over him and he couldn't control himself. And I know that sounds stupid because everyone has self-control, but he would just get this look on his face, this look in his eyes, and like no matter what I was saying, I couldn't get him off of me. And so immediately I'd be like, okay, time to dissociate. I'm just gonna leave my body, wait till this is over, and then he usually would leave. So then I was like, oh, thank God it's over. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't know how to talk to my previous stepfather about it. I did not want to tell my mother about it. And that becomes the story for so many people who are abused, is not knowing who to go to, who to turn to, what to say, how to say it, and knowing that the abuse won't always consistently happen. It'll just happen in moments where you can leave your body and then it'll be over. And you're like, I'll just deal with this until I can find a way to get out of it. My way out of it was that he was going to go into the military at the end of the year. So 6 months of me dealing with this. He was going to go into the military and leave. And I knew that was going to be my opportunity for this to be over. So I had like an end in sight, and I just had to make it there. Being that was my first relationship, it really didn't set the bar high for what I was expecting of men in my future relationships, which I also really recommend being aware of. The fact that he treated me that way made it seem like guys who would just be nice to me and like just a kind and normal person, that like, oh, they must like me. Like, no, that's just a decent human being. So I really had to learn what it meant for me to understand what it meant for a man to honor me without having a father to teach me that, and understanding what would the Holy Father, the Heavenly Father, want for me. He wouldn't want that. No, that's not for me. I'm a child of God. I don't deserve that. I deserve more. And I'm not going to say that like he's a horrible person, but I hope that he's learned from those choices and actions he's made in his future relationships with women. And there was even times where like, I don't want to put all his dirt out there, but there were times where like after I was in my mid-20s, he had come back into town and wanted to apologize to me. He like felt so bad. And then he abused me that time. And when he abused me that time, it was in the front of me, which was even worse. And then I got really sick and I had to go to the hospital and had all these complications in my body. And then he wrote this whole long journal apologizing for why he did it and why he couldn't, like all this stuff. And I kept that journal for such a long time because he went to California to become an actor. And I was like, I'm gonna keep this. It was the hurt in me. It was like, I want to get back at him somehow. And I was like, if he ever becomes famous enough, this journal is going out and I'm telling everybody. And so for some time he started kind of like getting some roles here and there. He would message me, be like, hey, can you send me back that journal? Can you mail that back to me? It had really good writing in it that I really want to utilize. And I would like mess with him for like a year, like, yeah, I'll mail it. What's your address? Oh, sure. And I just kept not doing it. And that was my way of getting back at him. Eventually I let it go and I just burned the journal because it hurt more and was more detrimental to me to hold on to that when I didn't need to. Because I definitely, and I'm grateful for it, maybe because of my 8th house stellium placements in the Scorpio house of being able to transmute and transform that, I really was able to let it go in the like physical trauma way. I wasn't afraid to be loved physically by someone else. I don't know, I think I was just really blessed that that experience wasn't as traumatic as it could have been. And I'm just really grateful for it. That's not the same for everybody. And like there were points where obviously I was overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do. But at the end of it, meeting new people, I knew not everyone was like that. It was very clear to me, like, no, that guy he has issues. So I learned a lot from that physical abusive relationship. And I had to go through this whole journey to learn about my sexuality because of that, because that was the way I was introduced to sex, the S word. That's the way I was introduced to that experience. And it taught me a lot about myself, and it's really helped me to have maybe more compassion for those who just get labeled naive, who get labeled like, well, you should have known, you should have this, you should have that. How about the person shouldn't have done it? How about I shouldn't have to be concerned about someone trying to overpower me and assault me? How about they should be the one who's responsible? Why is it my responsibility? So I learned a lot about my perspective on that whole thing and what people say. I'm like, no, really? I should be coming up with extra precautions for the fact that someone else doesn't have any morals or values or care enough to control their physical body against mine. Okay, I digress. The second portion I want to talk about in this, because I didn't want to make this super long, was about the emotional and psychological abusive relationship I was in, because honestly, that did more damage to me than the physical one. And that's the one that's taken me some time to be able to like talk about and heal from. And I think it's because it was a longer experience and more intense and more in-depth. But a lot of the things I experienced in that relationship with him was karma, and I've learned that. It was from me being unfaithful in my first relationship and not really like, I don't know, like to me it was like all of the actions I was choosing to do in my other relationships, the reasons that I chose to be technically, well, literally unfaithful was due to a fear of not wanting to hurt somebody. And you should never do that. This is for my people who are like me. I think it's a Libra thing maybe, where I was with my first, I call him my first actual boyfriend, and we were not compatible. He wasn't able to go to the depths that I wanted to emotionally, and we were better as friends, and that wasn't anything wrong. But I thought because of everything that was going on in his life, his mother was sick and she passed while we were dating, like there were so many things happening. I was like, there's no way I can break up with this man and make more pain in his life but I didn't feel romantically connected to him anymore, which made it easier to just kind of like, if someone would give me romantic attention, to be like, oh, okay, I'll just kind of like talk to them. That's not wrong, right? And it's not healthy, and it doesn't help anyone. And even though it hurts, it's healthier to just say what you need to say and close things off, rather than something being revealed and you're like, oh, thank God I can finally like end this because you found out. Not the way to do it, but I had done that twice, and so I wasn't learning the lesson. And so the relationship that was emotionally and psychologically abusive, I believe, was my karma for that, and was like, oh, this is balancing the scales of the misactions that I had taken in previous relationships. And being with him was hard. It was really hard. I want to say it's probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to grow through. I'm going to try and make this fast. I met him at a wedding, and he was quiet. He seemed cool. I wasn't dating anyone at the time, and my friends kept pushing me to talk to him. They kept like, oh, you're at a wedding, you know, that's what you do at weddings. You kind of flirt and you get to know people. And again, I was like, I don't know, I just kind of was excited to be like out of my state and in Florida. And so they kept pushing it. They were like, and I guess as far as like friend groups go, I am like very like, I guess, easily swayed by my friends. Not as much anymore, but I learned that. And so I kind of just did it because they told me to, which sounds stupid, so don't do that. And I like wrote my phone number on a little heart. Like, I had talked to him over the weekend, and he seemed chill. He seemed quiet. He was gentlemanly. I like didn't have a shirt for like the beach, and he went to a store and bought me one. Again, that doesn't mean, oh my God, he's the one. Maybe it's just a kind, simple gesture that humans should offer towards one another. I later come to find out the reason he was so chill, calm, and collected over that weekend that I got to know him was because he was hungover, which I also am not familiar with alcohol. Well, I am now, but I wasn't at the time, and I didn't realize he was hungover. So his energy level was not what I actually knew it to be later on. A year basically goes by, a little less than a year. It was like June of one year, and then 2020 was the year that I met him. So it was my pandemic relationship for sure. And I ran into him and his, the people he was staying with was the friend that I knew who got married. It was he knew them, so they were all living together. And this was like March of April, and I was stuck because they closed the border, so I couldn't leave. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go check on my friends. Didn't know that he was living with them, and then that happened. And as I got to know him there, first it was like, oh, this is cute. This is like, look how fate has brought it together. Karma has brought it together. And I do honestly feel like he really did like me. I do believe that. I feel like he really wanted to be in love with me, but I didn't love him, and I wasn't into him like that. And when I had to, and I was trying to do things differently because I was trying to learn from my previous relationships, I thought it would be beneficial for him to know that I didn't choose to come there because of him. He thought I came there because I wanted to be with him. He thought that I like wanted to be in a relationship with him. And I took it as an opportunity when he was like talking about, don't you think it's amazing that this and this and that? And I had to tell him like, that's not why I came. An immediate change in him. And I can understand that. And as much as I want to say that he's a narcissist, he has narcissistic tendencies. As much as I want to say that, it was simply a man who was really hurt because he had never really been in love and open to love, and he thought he could experience that with me. And when I told him I didn't come there for him, his Mars and Leo, his Aries, his ego placements were really hurt, and I never from that day saw him without alcohol or without a bottle or not being drunk. And I didn't realize the amount he was drinking was a lot because I don't drink alcohol. So I didn't know drinking a case was a lot of alcohol. I didn't know drinking a whole bottle of bourbon, I think it was bourbon, was a lot. I didn't know these things. And people kind of tried to warn me, and I wasn't listening. I was like, oh no, it's fine, you know. Like, they didn't warn me that he was drinking a lot. They're like, he kind of has a temper. But I hadn't seen that. Just because you hadn't seen someone's temper doesn't mean they don't have one. Let me just make that clear. He started drinking a lot, and then he introduced something to me. I had already experienced cannabis medicine and mushroom medicine before, and he introduced LSD, which I had a beautiful experience with the LSD and had no issues, and experiencing LSD actually just made me feel more like myself, and I was like, oh yeah, this feels normal. Like I felt like, yeah, this feels normal just because of my galactic nature. But when I was on it, I could see within him a lot of his like non-growth. I could like, it was very clear to me because he would take the LSD and he would be like, but is anything nothing? Like he was doing like, he like, I don't know what he was doing, but it made me, I was like, oh, he's like taking this thinking that it's just supposed to be trippy. It's supposed to be like a spiritual communion experience with all that is. So I noticed some differences there, but I was already there, didn't have anywhere to go, didn't have any money. It was Florida, it was hot, I was living out of my car. And I was like, well, maybe I can make this relationship work, you know, maybe like this is like, it's supposed to be hard. Maybe it's supposed to be hard. No, it's not supposed to be hard. It should be challenging at times so you can grow, but never hard. And so, okay, I'm gonna finish this in the next 9 minutes. And so there were so many traumatic moments I experienced with him while we were together. And to make matters worse, things got really confused because I want to say maybe just a month after us being together, he introduced me to MDMA. He introduced me to Molly, as some people call it, ecstasy, I guess you could call it as well. And I had done a little bit of research of MDMA before we took it because I was like, ooh, I can like do yoga, I can meditate. Like there were all these things I wanted to do while I experienced the medicine. And that's kind of not what happened. And the thing I didn't realize is that you can use MDMA, Molly. It creates the feeling of just this outpouring of, I just love everything and everyone. It feels beautiful and it's something we can access. But when I accessed it that way with him, it created this false sense that we were in love that I didn't realize. I didn't realize it was, I thought we were just bonding and the medicine was giving us an opportunity to bond. The medicine is creating a false feeling of bonding with them. It's not a real bond. It's the medicine being like, oh, I love you. Well, of course, you love everyone, technically. Unconditionally, we're all supposed to be loving, helping one another here as humans. That's already a given. So then I thought, oh, maybe this is gonna work every time I was on the MDMA. And he would take it maybe like once or twice a week, pretty repeatedly. I didn't know if that was abusing it. I didn't know. And he would like really push me to take it. And we took it basically over the course of like, I want to say 3 months. I was like pretty routinely taking MDMA. And then we went to a parking lot one day and he wanted to take the MDMA and then go see a movie. Like he has a 12th house stellium, so he's able to ingest a bunch of substances and like, I don't know what happens. It just goes off to a void somewhere. That's not me. I have Uranus and Neptune in the first house, and I'm very highly sensitive to anything and everything. And I was laying in the parking lot, and I remember looking out the window, and everything was in black and white. And it felt like I was in the Truman Show, and my heart was like beating out of my chest, and I was like, something is wrong, and I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. I was like, something is really wrong, I can't. And my body was like, you cannot take this anymore. And from that day, I didn't tell him, I'm not taking this anymore, I'm not doing it again, because I knew he would really try to. He was like a bully. He was really good at like forcing you to do things through like aggression and like just pressing it. And we had moved from August to September, so it made my transition of being like, I don't want to do it anymore really easy. We moved in with his mother, and I remember he would like offer it, and I'm like, no, it's okay, I don't want to right now. Come on, just take it. No, I'm good. Come on, please, just do it with me. I'm like, no. And I will say one of the biggest lessons I learned from being with him was how to really say no, which I'm still technically learning how to do with other people, but I really learned how to say no to him. And I said no more loudly and more times in my life than I think I ever have. I was like, no. And I yelled more than I ever thought I would have to. I was like, I'm yelling? I didn't even know I could yell. It was really bad. He started drinking even more heavily when we moved there. And then one night, like, that's when I thought the narcissist tendencies would come out. But I realized that, alcohol is called a spirit for a reason. So he's really inviting a lot of spirits to inhabit his body, because when you drink spirits, your spirit leaves and you let other spirits come in. And so he would drink so much, there was this one specific spirit that would come into him, and I could always tell because of how it looked at me through him. Like, it's like, I'm gonna mess with you, and you know I'm gonna mess with you, and this is gonna be fun for me. And that's when I felt like the narcissist tendencies would come out, because he would just make up stuff so he could yell at me. And like, I remember I had to like think about everything I did before I did it, so I wouldn't think I was crazy. And I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna put the charger right here, and I'm placing this here, and I did this. Oh, hello, bird. So he wouldn't claim that I like did something, because I remember he was like, why did you move the charger? And when I had purposefully, just intentionally set it up so he could charge his phone before bed, he's like, why did you move the charger? And I was like, I didn't, it's right there. He's like, no, you touched it. And he started freaking out and screaming, and then he like slammed the door, and then he went into the other room that was across from us and closed the door, and I opened the door and I saw his mom sitting there. And I thought maybe, oh, she's gonna like come help me, she's gonna defend me as a woman to woman, this man drunkenly yelling at me and accusing me, calling me names. And I knock on the door, he doesn't answer, so I let him have his space. I'm like, okay, I have some space, I have some time to be away. No. He comes out angry. He's like, you were supposed to wait at the door and keep knocking and try and like get me to open the door. And I was like, and so he starts yelling again, and I see his mom sitting on the couch, and she looks like she's dissociating. She looks like she's trying not to be there. And I was like, she's not gonna help me. She's not gonna defend me. She's not here for me. I'm alone. I had never felt more alone in my life. And she drank a lot too. It ran in their family, drinking. But on his dad's side of the family, they couldn't handle alcohol. So he had a mother who could and a father who couldn't, who created him. So yes, he could drink a lot, but he also couldn't handle it mentally, emotionally, in whatever way, even if he wasn't throwing it up. So it was mostly a lot of drinking. He did a lot of MDMA, and I never took it again after those 3 months. So I started to see a lot of darkness. I had been working on building a van so we could travel, in hopes that if I could get him out of his work space, his 9 to 5, he could go out into Gaia, into nature, and heal, because it is a healing experience to leave everything you know, to just be with nature and find yourself again. I thought that was going to be what would help. We traveled in a van together for 4, almost 5 months, and it was hell. It was horrible being in an enclosed environment with someone who continues to drink, continues to do any drug that they can find, and continues to belittle you and create false stories about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and yell at you all day. It's just not, it's not the wave. And it was my karma. And I'm so grateful, because I learned so much, and it taught me a lot, and I felt real sympathy for him. But there were moments like where I really felt like I was in hell, because he would drink so much, and so these spirits would come into him. And I remember one time I was looking at him, I was trying to talk to him, and I was like, do you hear me? And he like just smirked and like looked up at me, and I was in the middle of the woods with nowhere to go. And I was like, you know those, and he probably, I say you know those, just assuming that everyone who's watching this knows this, but those moments where you see something and the thing you see knows that you see it, that's the moment I was having, where it was like, yeah, I know you know that I'm in here. And I didn't want to admit it, because I thought if I admitted like, oh my gosh, I see this spirit, and I called it out, then I would be inviting it to me. So I would just like kind of like in my body be like, oh my God, I have like goosebumps talking about it right now. But I would realize like, oh, it's here, it knows I'm here, I'm just going to like not say anything. I didn't have like a deep connection with Yeshua or Mary Magdalene or my angels yet to feel that I could call to them and be like, assist me with exercising this. So I just hid in myself, or dissociated, was literally what I was doing all the time. And to close up this whole traumatic story, because I could go on for days and days. Get away, bugs. Again, this is how it felt, just get away. By the time we got to the end of our trip, we had stopped at one of his family members' houses, and while we were there, Spirit was speaking to me so strongly to get out. I was seeing so many angel numbers I hadn't been seeing on the road. I had time in the van by myself finally, because he went into the house, and him and the person that was in there with him, they would do a bunch of drugs, so they would be out for hours, just anything. Alcohol, Molly, Xanax, Vicodin, like you name it, they were doing it. And that's when I realized, oh, this is just the life he wants to live, or he's doing this because he's so sad that I don't actually like want to be with him, that this is what he has to do to deal with it. So I knew either way it was beneficial for me to leave. Everything came together to confirm it, because I was laying in the van. I had just sat with Spirit the first time since we've been on the road, because I never had time to do anything for myself, because he always needed me to do things for him. I had the time to myself in the van, and I had just finished and I felt good. I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna do this. I think I have to. I need help, Spirit. And I was laying in the van, and him and a friend walked outside, and they were standing outside the van, and they must have, whatever state of mind they were in, they didn't realize like my head was right by where they were talking. And his friend was one who sold the ecstasy, and he would get it from France. It was like really high quality, blah blah blah. And he was like, yeah, his friend was saying, yeah man, I had to stop selling to this one girl because she was like doing some crazy stuff. And my partner at the time was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, she was literally buying the Molly from this guy, and she'd put a little bit of ecstasy every day into her partner's drink so that he would stay in love with him, or in love with her. And I sat up in the bed like I had been exorcised myself, because I said, oh my God, the first 3 months of us being together, he was routinely giving me MDMA and Molly. And like, I could hear his response to him. He's like, yo, what? That's crazy. But like, he was saying it like, I kind of am doing that. And I don't know if he knew the girl that he was talking about not selling to anymore, but to me, that was so unnerving that girl, I pray to God, because he said the guy was complaining about feeling weird and feeling off and feeling sick. He's like, yeah, the guy was telling me like, I don't know, man, something's off with me, something's weird with me. And then he found out that the girl was putting ecstasy in his food and drinks every day to make him stay in love with her. That's not love. And that's when I realized, oh, because I was so confused about why we had gotten together. I was like, but it was so, that's what I said. I was like, it was so like sweet in the beginning. It was so nice. It was the drugs. And I'm closing this out here by basically saying I got the signs to leave, and leaving him was really hard. And I had the worst pain in my body of my life leaving him, and him yelling at me for 3 days as I was traveling down to meet my friends to pick me up. It was horrible. It was truly horrible. And I'm grateful that I'm not in that anymore. It needed to happen. I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad for what I learned. But it took me a really long time to let go of the trauma that I experienced while I was with him. In the van, the things he would say, the things he would do, me questioning my reality, having to count every step of everything I did because of what he would say I did. And I'm like, I did not do that. The gaslighting is what they call it. That was happening a lot. It was still difficult for me for like a year to 2 years after that relationship, which is just now, to not be triggered. Like when my partner and I first went on a trip in the van, moments would happen and I would like feel that moment again. And luckily I was conscious and aware enough that I didn't just say, leave me alone, get away. Like I didn't do anything like that. But I was like, I think I'm crying right now because like some trauma is coming up for me from my relationship with him. And my partner, my husband now, was there for me and just like sat with me, and I talked about what happened, and I would be able to recount things and let it go, which was a blessing. The hardest thing that I've had to heal from, outside of the trauma of just the memories, has been taking MDMA so routinely for so long, because the amount of love and feeling and outpouring that I felt connected to everything, I never felt so good in my life than when I took MDMA. And that's not a lie. Like I was like, and it wasn't like it, I know it's something we can feel without MDMA. I know there's a way to access that, but it takes like full faith and trust in God, in source, in love, in life, and real surrender to feel like how I felt on MDMA. And I felt it was really hard for me for a long time to access my heart center, because my heart was like, this doesn't feel like what we felt with the MDMA. Like my body was looking for that feeling. And I was like, we can find it by ourselves. We can find it by ourselves. And it took a long time to like recognize that I can access that without MDMA. And I wasn't like going and trying to find Molly or MDMA, but I remember feeling really angry and frustrated that I had experienced something like that knowing how long it would take for me to find that feeling again without it. And that's what I'm going to share about what I've learned from my abusive physical relationship, my emotional, psychologically abusive relationship, what it taught me, what I've learned, the value that I've experienced from being in those relationships is setting the stage for me to hold space for other people who will go through something like that. And I guarantee you, some random people will come into my life at some point and be going through something, and I will be able to actually understand what they're going through, which is why we go through things and grow through things that we don't want to, because we've chosen to be able to hold a space for other people on this earthly walk. And the only way we can really do that is if we know what they've been through. I can't hold space for someone who's been physically abused, emotionally, psychologically abused, if I lived a life where everything was great and everything was fine and I never had any trauma. That would be really, I would hold a space, but I wouldn't be able to create that connection. I wouldn't really be able to say, I understand. I'd be like, I'm really sorry. Like, I might be able to say, I'm so sorry, but I wouldn't be able to say, I understand. These are the reasons why we go through certain things in our life, I believe. And so I know that I'm here to hold a space for people who struggle with, like, wanting a feeling they felt with a substance and trying to find a healthy, grounded, earthly way to do that again. I know that I'll be able to hold a space for people who've been physically abused, and not only be able to hold a space in like a victimhood, but hold a space in like reclaiming yourself and honoring that that doesn't exist within you here and now. That has already passed, and there is life after it, and like being able to be that for someone else. So this is why I share all this, because I know it will be supportive of someone else. So thank you so much for listening to it. I trust it wasn't too triggering. I tried to keep everything, I toned most everything down because it was a lot worse than how I expressed it. But it has taught me a lot. And if there's any testimony that you have to share, that you feel ready to share and called to share, it can be a major difference for someone else's path in life. And I've been learning that through being open to sharing what I've grown through with other people, and knowing like, hey, either it'll help them or it won't. But either way, I feel good that I was able to offer some kind of understanding and perspective. So thank you for listening to mine. Feel free to leave any comments you want to, any questions. It was definitely a very long journey, but I'm grateful to be where I am now. So thank you for listening. As always, I am sending you peace, and I'm sending you love.